Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's edition, Friday Follies of The Rundown. I'm your host, Craig DeLuz, and joining me is my good friend. I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Piwowarski. I'll be co-hosting The Rundown today, and I'm not happy.
You're not happy? Why aren't you happy?
Well, I mean, I'm happy about co-hosting with you. That's always happy. But remember yesterday we told everybody all the good baseball stories and opening day. Well, last night my team didn't get to play because the other team, somebody got COVID. Screw COVID, okay? Are we done with this or not? Let's play ball.
I want to tell you, so I was driving in the car yesterday when I heard the news, and all I could think of was, poor Mike. Poor Mike. I mean, it's not like they really, play baseball. The Mets really actually play professional baseball, but it would have been nice for them to at least be able to get on the field.
Listen, you can bag on the Mets all you want. I know they would beat the Cowboys in a baseball game. That's for damn sure. It was horrible. I mean, it was like getting ready for a big date, a big outing. Had everything all set up, ready to go, and then the stupid Nationals are like, "Oh, somebody got COVID. We have to trace." Have we not shown that the tracing is crap? Okay, that it doesn't work. Let's just move on. Horrible night.
That's okay, man. That's okay, man. I'm sure that you found ways to console yourself. I mean, there were other teams playing baseball.
I did. I watched the Giants play instead.
You didn't watch the Yankees?
The who?
No, that's a musical group.
Yes, there we go. Yes,
let's not do our who's on first routine this morning. All right, folks. We'll tell you what. Let's jump right into it. Our first story today. You guys all know that. There's been another mass casualty event involving firearms, involving the use of a firearm. It happened in Orange, California, which is basically in Southern California. It was an individual who, utilizing a semi-automatic handgun, basically went into an office building with some people with whom it appears he had disputes, and locked the gates and proceeded to shoot and kill a number of people, including a 9-year-old child. It's basically the third shooting of this type in the U.S. over the last 2 weeks. And so needless to say, every single time there is a mass casualty event involving firearms, you have everybody and their mother coming out and declaring, we need to do something. We need to pass gun control. And, you have in this particular case, I want to talk about a story that's actually out of the New York Post, where you have members of the Hollywood elite, folks from Hollywood who decided that they wanted to come out and talk about and say, we need to institute gun control. For example, you have Alyssa Milano who said, we need to ban assault weapons. Except she forgot one thing. Yeah. Assault weapons, or what they deem to be assault weapons, semi-automatic centerfire rifles. Yeah, there's already a ban in California on those. Then you had another Hollywood star come out and say, well, we need background checks. We need universal background checks. Yeah, we've already got those in California.
Yeah, I was going to say, Craig, Samantha, that's her name, right? Samantha. Isn't that how Tony Danza used to say it? Doesn't she know that you have all the gun laws that you need in California? I mean, you obviously, these crimes must not be real. I mean, you have every law there is. Isn't it illegal to have a firearm, to shoot people, to murder people? Are there additional laws that she thinks they need? It's ridiculous. We see this all the time. It's always more laws. But now it seems like we're empowering the Hollywood elite again to make policy. At least in the last 4 years, the president would just, slough them off and get away from me. And when they started to speak up, all of a sudden the Hollywood elite, it's like they got reelected. The Hollywood elite has been reelected, and now they can make policy and solve the country's problems.
Exactly. And they pass idiotic stuff like, for example, smart guns, which, by the way, are pretty dumb guns. Things like micro stamping. They come up with all of these ideas that all come out of Hollywood movies that in real life never, ever really work. And then
let's be sure you understand this. Those things that Craig's talking about, their micro stamping and smart guns, those don't exist. They passed the smart gun law in New Jersey, and they said, we're going to give it a 10-year 10-year timeline for it to go into effect because the technology doesn't currently exist. They're creating laws on technology that doesn't exist because they hope one day it does, and then it'll be law when it does come into effect. That's the most stupid thing I've heard since.
But you have to understand. See, just like in movies, you have fiction and nonfiction. Yeah. Now they've allowed that to bleed over into policy where they have fiction and nonfiction, and quite frankly, they're passing bills based on fiction. But in this particular case, now what we're talking about is a denial of reality, because you say you want universal background checks. California has universal background checks. You say you want ammunition background checks. California has ammunition background checks. You say you want to ban certain firearms. They've banned certain firearms. They say you want magazine capacity. They have magazine capacity limits. And guess what? It still happened. Wake up to reality and realize that more gun laws is not the solution. Saying we're going to pass more and more gun laws because the ones we have in place aren't working does not make sense. It is just sheer and utter stupidity by people who have absolutely no idea what they are talking about.
What I know for sure about that incident, Craig, is that the victims there, had the absolute opportunity to defend themselves stripped away under California law. They decided to obey the law and not have firearms. Now, I'm not saying we have to arm everyone, but if they choose to, and they choose to obey the law, they were unable to. However, the bad guy, he don't care. Hey, you really think if he's going to go commit murder, all these little lowly felonies and misdemeanors, which your gun laws are going to stop him? Absolutely not. And we see that time and time again. Gun laws stop people from being able to protect themselves.
Well, and once again, the reality of stuff really doesn't matter to the left. And one area where that can be seen is in President Biden's proposed infrastructure plan. Now, I probably should use air quotations, infrastructure, because we all know that almost none of this, the overwhelming majority of the crap that is in this bill has nothing to do with infrastructure. One perfect example is $5 billion. $5 billion that's being set aside in this infrastructure plan to go to gun violence prevention organizations, or basically gun control organizations. Now, these are organizations that advocate. These are advocacy organizations, public policy advocacy organizations that advocate for the taking or the restricting or shall I say the infringement of a constitutional right. And yet somehow the White House has deemed this to be worthy of being called infrastructure.
Yeah, infrastructure plan. You know, the rebuilding or maintenance of highways, bridges, tunnels, and railways as clearly anti-gun organizations. Not sure how I make the connection at all. They could say, well, listen, the firearms are part of the infrastructure of the nation. Maybe, I don't know. It's part of our makeup, part of our background. But how you tie this up under, the infrastructure plan is ridiculous. It's kind of like the COVID relief plan involves giving millions of dollars to Pakistan, because we have to. Otherwise, we might get, the Pakistani flu. And
it is frustrating. I was actually glad to see that this was in roll call. But what's interesting about it is you won't hear the mainstream media talk about it. They'll talk about, the Biden is putting $5 billion towards gun control, but he's not going to say that it's part of the infrastructure plan. The mainstream media is so absolutely in bed with and covering up for both the ineptness, the decrepitness, and the dishonesty of this particular White House. It is beyond maddening.
Yep. President Biden, we know that the people are coming here to this country because you're such a loving and caring man. Let me ask you this question. I'm sorry, what? What just happened here? From the news conference last week? It's absolutely sickening to watch the level of corruption between the media and the White House.
Beyond. It is beyond corruption, and it is highly frustrating. And the problem is we're seeing it bleed into. We are seeing. I mean, you literally have a White House here that is attempting to literally, as he said he would, transform the values of this country and undermine every significant institution that has made this country great.
Yeah, absolutely, including what's gone on recently with the U.S. military. Now, listen, under President Obama, the military became the test bed, the test grounds for all of his social experiments. And you know what? The president gets to make policy for our armed forces. So it was the easy place to do. He may not have been able to push that on to individuals in the community, but he could push it on to individuals in the military. And then when they left the military, maybe they take those new, Democrat Obama values with them to, the back to the civilian world. Well, under President Trump, we had the placed on hold the transgender issue in the military. And now that has President Trump is gone, we have President Biden now has just reinstituted the transgender equality policy in the military. Now, listen, I'm going to give you this. The thing that you need with your military, I'm telling you from somebody that's worn that uniform for over 20 years, is good order and military discipline. I don't need 30 different individuals in a platoon when it's time to go do a mission. I need 30 people that say, yes, sir, no, sir, how high, sir. They do it as a unit, as an organization, and carry out the mission. Individuality is not something you're looking for. You want to go, hey, listen, at the end of the day, you go home, you're gonna go watch hockey, and I'm gonna go watch baseball. That's great. We all have our individual things to do, but not in uniform, not in formation. It's not what we do. I can go on forever, Craig. Let me. I know you got something to say about it.
Well, once again, this is not the place for social experimentation. And once again, I believe that, if an individual believes that if that's what they believe and they believe they need to make that transition, then that's fine. But in the military, the problem is your job is two things: kill people and break things.
Yeah.
That's really about it. And that ought to be all that they are really focused on. Because, we literally have we have much competition from a major power called China. And militarily, they're not putting up with any of this stuff. Their military is focusing on exactly what it's supposed to be focused on. And when they see stuff like this, when we start instituting programs where we're now doing social engineering in the military, when all of a sudden the role of the military is become lessened because now we're interested more in social experiments, then you start to see you make us vulnerable, period. That's all I'm going to say. You wind up making us vulnerable. And it's a major concern of mine.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to bring down the readiness of forces. It's going to put extra tasks on all those involved. And listen, this is nothing against, your sexuality, whichever way you happen to choose, or whichever way you happen to be born, that's on you. And the military can adjust for that because those are still men and women. There are two sets of bathrooms, two sets of quarters, two sets of everything. Now you're literally throwing in a third, and now you want to take time away from good order and military discipline to deal with the third and the issue. I mean, Craig, how do you even answer them? Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. No, ma'am. No, sir. What would I have to no pronoun? Yes, pronoun. It's just
exactly. Ridiculous. And so we're focusing on those things instead of the things that really matter, which is the role of the military in protecting us from enemies, foreign and domestic.
Right. Exactly.
But it's their goal once again is to fully and wholly undermine what we know to be that has made America great. And another example of that is the 1619 Project. And for those of you who don't know what the 1619 Project is, it is basically a part of critical race theory, the whole new changing of history in order to basically talk about how basically America is a racist country, always has been a racist country, always will be a racist country. And therefore we need to, undermine and destroy everything that is part that is America. It was originated by an author who works for the New York Times. And now it turns out that Hulu is actually going to be producing a docu-series. That's right. They're going to be producing and airing the 1619 Project, stories in the New York Times. They're going to basically produce it now as a docu-series, once again, in order to further another institution, the entertainment industry, to now once again further undermine and rewrite history, just like they want to rewrite what the military is and what the role of the military is. Now they want to rewrite history, fundamental history as to who we are as a nation.
Yeah, and listen, this is the perfect administration to do it. We know that they will allow it, and they will allow it to be rewritten. It's always this whole 1619 issue has always confused me. I'm not sure if these people that want to rewrite the history books have even looked at the history books as they stand now. What happened from 1492 to 1619? We're just going to forget all that part. None of that matters at all. And from 1619 until 1775, and actually 1776, when a document was signed, that we were not the United States of America. We were. This was the English colonies, and depending on where you were in this country, you could have been a French colony or a Spanish colony. So why are we holding those? Why are we holding this country, these people that have been here since 1776, us since 1776, responsible for the terms and laws of a different country? I believe we went to war with with England to get rid of those laws.
There is no other country that has lost as many of their own people, as many of their own citizens fighting to end slavery. No country lost as many people as the United States did in order to end slavery. And mind you, let's just be clear. One only needs to read Nicole Hannah Jones. You only need to read some of her stuff to understand that her whole goal, quite frankly, in all of this is to essentially reframe or rewrite American history in order to make America evil.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's the history of slavery in this country is absolutely a horrific thing. Again, that started before we were a country. It is our nation's greatest sin, but it was the way that we became a nation. It was the compromise that was made, and we've had very many conversations on compromise. But it was the evil that had to occur to end the other evil. But listen, I know it took 80 years after creation of this country to get rid of slavery, but we did get rid of slavery, and we've been rid of slavery now for 156 years. Right. Doing it in my head. But Craig, there are still people out there 156 years later that feel as though they should be paid reparations. I don't know if you saw this recent study out of Brown University where the students were asked there if it was possible, it was available to pay the descendants of those that were slaves from 156 years ago, should we pay them reparations? And the answer was over 90%. Yes, absolutely.
Well, and the funny part is that once again, there's this disconnection because they just think, well, the university should pay them. They don't understand where that money exactly is going to come from. The university is not going to if they're going to pay reparations to those who are affiliated with the school, it's not just going to come out of the air. It's going to come out of their pockets. And I'm assuming that many of those who are there at Brown are either some of them are probably there on scholarship. Some of them are there on financial aid. Some of them are there on mommy and daddy's dime. But I'm wondering how many of them are there paying their own way through, right? And they don't realize because if they are, they're going to realize every dollar that gets paid out in reparations comes from their pocket. And that's how socialism works is they take everything from you and then they redistribute it. And, the lemmings don't realize that they're the ones that are footing the bill.
Yeah. Listen, I blame this. I blame this solely. I'm going to put it on the back of Barack Obama. Prior till that point, this was this country had come a long way in race relations. I could tell you from the time I grew up and witnessed busing and was part of it, everything that had gone on in the inner cities, that we'd come a very long way, and we're had pretty much equality. I'm sorry, the way we had things. If you didn't have something, it's because you didn't work for it. That's how I saw it until President Obama comes along and creates the entitlement generation. And everybody's entitled to something. Now you have the black youth there, these college kids at Brown that feel as though they're entitled to these reparations. Oh, we understand it was 156 years ago, and there's not a single person living or around that had anything to do with slavery, but you still owe us for it, even though I never suffered at all.
Well, and it's amazing because it was, it's funny because was just perusing the article, and it wasn't a poll or anything. This literally was a vote of the students. So the students
Yes.
voted. This is
Yeah.
what they vote, and it's like, how
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like I'm like this. Do I believe that Do I believe that there is? I mean, it is the greatest sin that this country has,
Yes.
and I believe that things are. Do I believe that there is still racism that exists and we still have to deal with some of it? Yes. Do
Sure.
I believe it is the same or even close to what it was when my father was growing up? Or was it as bad for him as it was for his father? No. Every generation we get better. And every generation we get closer to that full and complete vision of what America is. I always say the racism that my father experienced was a roadblock. The racism that I experienced was more of a road, more of a speed bump. And that for my kids is even less. It's like, look, if you want to succeed in this country, I don't care what color you are, what ethnicity you are, what race, nationality, what religion, you can be successful in this country if you are willing to put your hands to the plow and work hard for it. And you know what? Sometimes stuff's going to get in your way. Life isn't perfect. I get it. It ain't perfect. But guess what? No one ever said it would be.
Yeah, it's rough, and I don't think people realize the strides we did make in this country after before our time, Craig, watching the civil rights riots and everything else. But we saw the aftermath of that. We saw desegregation, in schools. We saw all of that being enforced while we were going to school. And it was a big deal. I remember, listen, if you were a white guy, you couldn't have yourself a black girlfriend. If you're a black guy, you definitely couldn't have a white girlfriend when I was going to school. And that was in the South and in the North. So it wasn't regional. It was something that was going on all time. Yeah. I know it's a corny reference, but to show you the difference between even in the 80s and today, I was watching one of the greatest comedy classics of all time, Hot Tub Time Machine. And there's a scene in there when they realize that they're back in 1986. And Craig Robertson's character is frustrated, and he sits down and he realizes he's now a black man in 1986. He goes, "How am I supposed to get a job?" Because that's what it was like. You and I could be standing somewhere together in 1986 with the same credentials, walk in the door, and the black guy wasn't getting a job. That's just the way it was. That was the silent racism. That was we're not going to turn fire hoses. We're not going to desegregate. We're just not going to give you equal chances. And then we had affirmative action, which did a wonderful job of putting things on a level playing field. Well, guess what? Now you want more. Well, now the students that have never been involved in racism want more.
I will tell you this, and one of the challenges with the way in which in many places affirmative action was instituted was, and I'll give you an example. I went to college starting in the late 80s, early 90s. And what I found was a number of people who went to college, who went to where I went to school, California State University, Chico, go Wildcats. What I found was there were a number of people who were smart, who were intelligent, but didn't have some of the fundamental tools needed to be successful in college. That many of them didn't know how to write a 5-paragraph essay. Many did not know. Many were not didn't have the math skills necessary. I worked in a program where I was working with college students on how to add, multiply, and divide fractions. That was the level of, and these were smart folks. This was just stuff that they were not didn't have exposure to. If they had gone to a community college, or if they had gotten that, then they would have been prepared to be there. So you take someone who take someone out of their environment, South Central Los Angeles, East Oakland, and you put them in a place like Chico that was like 3% black.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, not only are they, and once again, this is pre-internet, so you couldn't find a place to get your hair cut, you couldn't find decent food, and there definitely wasn't anything worth listening to on the radio. It was a complete culture shock.
Right.
And on top of it, they're taking classes where there's basic skills that they need that they don't have.
Right.
Many of them weren't able to succeed, not because they weren't smart enough, but because they weren't prepared to be there. We've actually seen in California, we got rid of affirmative action. We've actually seen graduation rates in California's law schools increase dramatically in the public law schools, because the people of color who were there actually were qualified to be there. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm all for, trying to once again increase and improve diversity, but you don't do that by lowering standards. And that's what's happened. And they don't care. They don't care about the number of people graduating. All they care about is the number of the people that they get in. So they get in a bunch of people and no one graduates. Well, that's okay. We met our quota. And that's the way in which it's been instituted.
Was I believe a successful policy, especially when it comes to racism. It leveled that playing field. When that silent racism went on, it took the standard and said, you know what? If the only reason you're getting rid of this person is because of their race, well, that's no longer a factor. Now you must consider them equal. If not, it's almost like your points on your civil service exam. You got a bonus point because you had not received a fair chance over the past 100 years. But I'm sorry, in my opinion, it became level at that. Is there racism? Always going to be racism. There's always going to be hate. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be, again, against the damn Yankees. It's just there's always going to be hate. It's always going to be there.
Yeah, but you know what? See, just like hate against white males seems to be acceptable in society, hate against the Yankees seems to be acceptable in society as well.
It is. Listen, they are. The
Yankees are the straight white male of baseball.
Yeah, they're the baseball version of the Cowboys. They're both called America's team.
Boom, boom. All right, hey, let's get into today's parting shot, and this one I thought was, once again, I know we try to keep these kind of light, but sometimes you come across something and you're like, you know what? I got to say something about this. And you guys might remember, here, I'll put the photo up. You guys might remember Kaitlin Bennett. Now, Kaitlin Bennett took her graduation photos, and this was an iconic photo that she had taken outside of her university where she was just trying to talk about how important her fundamental rights are to her. This was one that came out, once again, this was in 2018. So we're not talking, this wasn't like yesterday. We're talking about it's 3 years old, right? And all of a sudden, Instagram has decided that they are going to pull down this photo because they say that it incited violence or it incites violence.
Now, Craig, I know the photo, and we just took a look at it again. Is there some sort of hidden swastika or white power sign in there that I missed?
Well, there is the photo. There is the one little thing where she says "come and take it," which is actually a statement of historical reference, kind of like by any means necessary.
Yep.
Right. We don't see anybody.
Hands. Yep,
we don't see anybody pulling down images that say by any means necessary. But she is exercising her constitutional right, both in this case, both her right to free speech, as well as her right to keep and bear arms. And what makes me mad about this is that there's a difference between hate speech and speech that you hate. And we have come to the point now in society where people want to ban speech that they hate. They are not interested in actual free speech. And they're okay with hate speech if it's hate speech that they agree with.
I'm entitled to the speech I want to hear. I'm entitled to tell you when it offends me, and you have to act on it. It's the continuation of the entitlement generation. It's horrible. You know what? You don't get what you want all the time. Sometimes you got to suck it up, and sometimes you got to deal with it. Caitlin's standing there, not violating any laws. She's in compliance with the First Amendment, in compliance with the Second Amendment. She gets to do what she wants to do. If you don't like what she looks like standing there holding a legally owned firearm, don't look at the picture. Don't look at it. It's easy. Make your own choice.
How simple is that? We try to keep it simple here, folks, but life is just not so. Anyway, folks, hey, that's going to be it for today's edition of The Rundown. We very much appreciate you tuning in. We appreciate you liking, sharing, and subscribing, telling your friends about The Rundown. Subscribe now.
Subscribe.
We'll talk to you guys. You guys have a good weekend.